The scream of tearing metal split the quiet coastal night before my exhausted brain could process what I was seeing. My foot slammed the brake pedal, the Toyota skidding on loose gravel as I stared through the windshield at the impossible sight unfolding above the black water. A private jet, small and sleek, trailed fire and smoke as it fell from the starless sky like a dying comet. The roar of failing engines tore through the silence, and then the aircraft hit the bay in a thunderous explosion of steam and spray. The impact shook the ground beneath my tires. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's go back to hours before, where it all started. For 3 heartbeats, I sat frozen, hands locked on the steering wheel, watching the shattered fuselage bob once, twice, then begin its slow slide beneath the churning surface. The broken wing caught moonlight for an instant before vanishing into darkness. Then the paralysis shattered. I was moving before conscious thought caught up, flinging the door open so hard it bounced back against my hip. My feet hit the gravel running. The rocky shoreline appeared out of nowhere. I stumbled, my ankle turning on uneven stones, but I caught myself against a boulder slick with sea spray. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. Someone was in that water. Someone was dying right now while I stood here. I dragged my phone from my jacket pocket with shaking hands and punched 911, already kicking off my ankle boots as the line connected. Plane crash. I gasped to the dispatcher, my words tumbling over each other. Shoreline Drive, mile marker 7. Small jet. It went into the bay. Send everyone. I didn't wait for a response. I dropped the phone onto the stones and shrugged out of my jacket, then the button-down shirt I'd worn over my thin undershirt for the drive home. The October wind cut straight through to my skin. No time. I hit the water running. The cold was a physical blow that drove the air from my lungs. For a terrifying second, my muscles locked, refusing to obey. Then training overrode shock. I forced my arms to move, my legs to kick, propelling myself away from shore. Salt spray stung my eyes. Each stroke forward felt like dragging myself through ice. The taste of brine flooded my mouth, bitter and metallic. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, wreckage loomed like the skeleton of a sea monster. One shattered wing jutted from the water at a sickening angle. The rest was already half submerged, sinking fast. "Hello," my shout came out ragged, barely audible over the slap of waves against metal. "Can anyone hear me?" "Hold on." Only the groan of twisting aluminum answered. A slick of fuel spread across the surface, rainbowing in the faint moonlight. The acrid stench of chemicals and scorched rubber clogged my throat. I coughed, swimming harder, ducking around jagged pieces of debris that floated past like deadly puzzle pieces. The cockpit window was smashed, a gaping wound in the fuselage. I gulped air in duff. Underwater, the world turned murky green and silent except for the roar of blood in my ears. My eyes burned against the salt, but I forced them open. Through the broken window, I could make out the interior, crushed seats, floating papers, and there, still strapped into the pilot's position, a man. His head lolled forward against the restraints. Bubbles leaked from his nose in a thin, weakening stream. My lungs were already screaming. I kicked through the window frame, felt something sharp tear across my thigh, ignored it. The man's face was pale in the underwater gloom, a dark gash splitting his left eyebrow. Blood ribboned into the water. His expensive gray suit was plastered to his frame, the white dress shirt beneath already translucent. I grabbed his shoulder and shook. No response. His chest wasn't moving. Panic clawed at my control. I hooked both arms under his and yanked backward. He didn't budge, still strapped in. The plane groaned around us, the entire structure tilting as water poured in faster. My vision started to sparkle at the edges. Not enough air. Not enough time. I fumbled along his torso until my fingers found the seat belt buckle and pressed. The harness released with a metallic click, and suddenly his full weight collapsed onto me. I nearly lost my grip as the cabin floor shifted sharply downward. The jet was sinking faster. Move, move, move. I kicked off the seat, dragging him toward the window. His body was dead weight, his head rolling against my shoulder. Broken glass from the shattered window scraped my arms, my legs. I didn't feel it. All I felt was the burning in my lungs and the desperate need to reach the surface before we both drowned. Light exploded above me. I broke through, gasping, choking, hauling air into my starved lungs in great whooping breaths. The man's head hung back, his mouth slack. I shifted my grip, locking my arm across his chest the way I'd been taught years ago in certification training. His gold signet ring glinted on his right hand as I started the agonizing swim back to shore. Waves battered us from every direction. My muscles turned to fire. My teeth chattered so violently I bit my tongue and tasted copper mixed with salt. When my feet finally scraped bottom, I sobbed with relief. I half-dragged, half-carried him through the shallows, every step an act of pure, stubborn will. We collapsed together on the pebbled beach just beyond the tide's reach. I rolled him onto his back, my own body screaming in protest. The moonlight caught his face fully for the first time. He was striking. Late 30s, maybe 40. Strong features, sharp cheekbones, a straight nose broken at some point and healed slightly crooked. Dark hair plastered to his skull. The gash above his eyebrow still wept blood that mixed with seawater and ran down his temple. His skin had gone a terrible grayish white. I pressed 2 fingers to the side of his neck, feeling for a pulse. There. Faint, thready, but there. His chest barely rose. Water burbled at the corners of his mouth. I tilted his head back, pinched his nose, and sealed my mouth over his, breathing for him. Once. Twice. His chest expanded weakly under my hands. I shifted position, laced my fingers together, and began compressions. 30 of them, counting under my breath, keeping the rhythm steady even though my arms shook. Come on, I heard myself say, my voice cracking. Don't you dare die on me. Come on. 15 compressions in, he convulsed. I barely had time to turn his head before he vomited seawater onto the stones, his body heaving with the effort. He coughed, gagged, coughed again. The sound was awful, wet and desperate, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I supported his shoulder, keeping him on his side until the retching subsided. When he finally went still, I eased him back down, my hands gentle despite their trembling. You're okay, I whispered, more to myself than to him. You're going to be okay. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. Red and blue lights flickered against the low clouds. Help was coming. Relief made me dizzy. Then his eyes opened, just slits at first, revealing pale, gray irises that seemed to glow against his death-pale skin. His gaze found mine and locked there with an intensity that froze me in place. Before I could speak, his hand shot out and clamped around my wrist. The strength in his grip was shocking for a man who'd just been drowning. I yelped, nearly jerking back. No hospital. His voice was barely more than a rasp, thick with an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe Eastern European. The words came out labored, each one costing him. No, hospital. I stared at him, my exhausted mind struggling to make sense of what he was saying. What? You need a hospital. You almost died. You have a head wound, possible internal injuries, near drowning. His fingers tightened, his grip just shy of painful. Those pale gray eyes burned into mine with a ferocity that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with command. Even half dead, soaked and bleeding, he radiated something dangerous. Please. The word came out strangled. No, hospital. They will find me. They will find me. The sirens were getting closer, maybe half a mile down the coastal highway now. The emergency lights painted the rocky shore in stuttering reds and blues. I looked from his face to his hand on my wrist, to the expensive watch just visible beneath his soaked shirt cuff, to the gold ring that looked old and significant, and then back to his eyes. Understanding flickered like a match struck in darkness. This wasn't a simple plane crash. This man wasn't a simple victim. Help me up, he commanded, his voice gaining strength despite the accent thickening his words. They will come. not rescue. Hunters. Every rational part of my brain screamed that I should wait for the paramedics, for the police, for someone with authority and answers. But something in his face, in the raw desperation beneath that commanding exterior, overrode logic. I slipped my arm around his torso, feeling him wince as I levered him to his feet. He was heavier than he looked, solid muscle beneath the soaked suit. Blood dripped from his face onto my bare shoulder. We staggered across the rocky beach like drunks, his weight pressing down on me with each lurching step. "My car," I gasped. "Can you make it?" He nodded once, jaw clenched against pain. "Must." We stumbled up the embankment to where my Toyota sat with the door still hanging open, headlights cutting pale beams through the darkness. I practically poured him into the passenger seat. His head fell back against the headrest, breath coming in short, controlled bursts. Blood still seeped from the gash above his eye, tracking down the side of his face. "Drive," he rasped as I slid behind the wheel, my wet clothes soaking into the fabric seat. "Away from crash. They will look for the plane first. Gives us minutes. Maybe. Us. When had this become us?" My hand shook as I turned the key. The engine caught, and I pulled back onto the empty highway, heading north away from the approaching sirens. My foot pressed the accelerator harder than I intended. In the rearview mirror, the crash site glowed orange where fuel still burned on the water surface. Smoke rose in a black column against the starless sky. Then I saw them. 5 sets of headlights, appearing one after another from a side road half a mile behind us. They moved in formation, synchronized and purposeful, not scattered like emergency responders rushing to help. The lead vehicle's spotlight suddenly flared to life, sweeping across the water in a wide arc like a searching eye, illuminating the wreckage, the beach, the empty shoreline. Then the spotlight swung toward the road. "Toward us. Go," the man hissed through clenched teeth. "Do not let them see this car." I didn't think. I just drove. My foot pressed the accelerator to the floor, and the Toyota lurched forward, engine whining in protest. The coastal highway curved ahead, following the natural bend of the shoreline. I took the turn too fast, tires squealing, then killed the headlights. Darkness swallowed us whole. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow service road I'd passed 1,000 times but never used. "Turn there." I yanked the wheel. The car bounced onto the unpaved track, branches scraping the sides. Behind us, the spotlight swept past where we'd been seconds before, then swung back, searching. I held my breath, pressing deeper into the shadows of overhanging trees. The 5 vehicles roared past on the main highway, their red taillights disappearing around the curve. We sat in silence, engine idling, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. "Keep going," he said quietly. "This road connects to Route 12, 2 miles north. We take the long way." "The long way to where?" My voice came out higher than I intended. "I don't even know who you are, who they are, what I just... You saved my life. That is all you need to know right now." He pressed a hand to his ribs, wincing. "Drive, please." So I drove. The service road was barely wide enough for one vehicle, rutted and overgrown. My cottage was 20 minutes away by the main road. This route would take an hour, winding through state forest land and abandoned quarry access paths. By the time we finally pulled into my gravel driveway, the eastern sky was beginning to pale. Dawn was coming. I cut the engine and sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, staring at my small seaside cottage with its peeling blue paint and sagging front porch. Home. Safe. Ordinary. Everything I'd left behind the moment I'd pulled this stranger from the water. "I need to get you inside," I said, my voice flat with exhaustion. He nodded, already reaching for the door handle. 15 compressions in, he convulsed. I barely had time to turn his head before he vomited seawater onto the stones, his body heaving with the effort. He coughed, gagged, coughed again. The sound was awful, wet and desperate, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I supported his shoulder, keeping him on his side until the retching subsided. When he finally went still, I eased him back down, my hands gentle despite their trembling. "You're okay," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "You're going to be okay." In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. Red and blue lights flickered against the low clouds. Help was coming. Relief made me dizzy. Then his eyes opened. Just slits at first, revealing pale, gray irises that seemed to glow against his death-pale skin. His gaze found mine and locked there with an intensity that froze me in place. Before I could speak, his hand shot out and clamped around my wrist. The strength in his grip was shocking for a man who'd just been drowning. I yelped, nearly jerking back. "No hospital." His voice was barely more than a rasp, thick with an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe Eastern European. The words came out labored, each one costing him. "No hospital." I stared at him, my exhausted mind struggling to make sense of what he was saying. "What? You need a hospital. You almost died. You have a head wound, possible internal injuries, near drowning." His fingers tightened, his grip just shy of painful. Those pale gray eyes burned into mine with a ferocity that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with command. Even half dead, soaked and bleeding, he radiated something dangerous. "Please." The word came out strangled. "No, hospital. They will find me. They will find me." The sirens were getting closer, maybe half a mile down the coastal highway now. The emergency lights painted the rocky shore in stuttering reds and blues. I looked from his face to his hand on my wrist, to the expensive watch just visible beneath his soaked shirt cuff, to the gold ring that looked old and significant, and then back to his eyes. Understanding flickered like a match struck in darkness. This wasn't a simple plane crash. This man wasn't a simple victim. "Help me up," he commanded, his voice gaining strength despite the accent thickening his words. "They will come. Not rescue. Hunters." Every rational part of my brain screamed that I should wait for the paramedics, for the police, for someone with authority and answers. But something in his face, in the raw desperation beneath that commanding exterior, overrode logic. I slipped my arm around his torso, feeling him wince as I levered him to his feet. He was heavier than he looked, solid muscle beneath the soaked suit. Blood dripped from his face onto my bare shoulder. We staggered across the rocky beach like drunks, his weight pressing down on me with each lurching step. "My car," I gasped. "Can you make it?" He nodded once, jaw clenched against pain. "Must." We stumbled up the embankment to where my Toyota sat with the door still hanging open, headlights cutting pale beams through the darkness. I practically poured him into the passenger seat. His head fell back against the headrest, breath coming in short, controlled bursts. Blood still seeped from the gash above his eye, tracking down the side of his face. "Drive," he rasped as I slid behind the wheel, my wet clothes soaking into the fabric seat. "Away from crash. They will look for the plane first. Gives us minutes. Maybe. Us. When had this become us?" My hand shook as I turned the key. The engine caught, and I pulled back onto the empty highway, heading north away from the approaching sirens. My foot pressed the accelerator harder than I intended. In the rearview mirror, the crash site glowed orange where fuel still burned on the water surface. Smoke rose in a black column against the starless sky. Then I saw them. 5 sets of headlights, appearing one after another from a side road half a mile behind us. They moved in formation, synchronized and purposeful, not scattered like emergency responders rushing to help. The lead vehicle's spotlight suddenly flared to life, sweeping across the water in a wide arc like a searching eye, illuminating the wreckage, the beach, the empty shoreline. Then the spotlight swung toward the road. "Toward us. Go," the man hissed through clenched teeth. "Do not let them see this car." I didn't think. I just drove. My foot pressed the accelerator to the floor, and the Toyota lurched forward, engine whining in protest. The coastal highway curved ahead, following the natural bend of the shoreline. I took the turn too fast, tires squealing, then killed the headlights. Darkness swallowed us whole. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow service road I'd passed 1,000 times but never used. "Turn there." I yanked the wheel. The car bounced onto the unpaved track, branches scraping the sides. Behind us, the spotlight swept past where we'd been seconds before, then swung back, searching. I held my breath, pressing deeper into the shadows of overhanging trees. The 5 vehicles roared past on the main highway, their red taillights disappearing around the curve. We sat in silence, engine idling, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. "Keep going," he said quietly. "This road connects to Route 12 2 miles north. We take the long way." "The long way to where?" My voice came out higher than I intended. "I don't even know who you are, who they are, what I just... You saved my life. That is all you need to know right now." He pressed a hand to his ribs, wincing. "Drive, please." So I drove. The service road was barely wide enough for one vehicle, rutted and overgrown. My cottage was 20 minutes away by the main road. This route would take an hour, winding through state forest land and abandoned quarry access paths. By the time we finally pulled into my gravel driveway, the eastern sky was beginning to pale. Dawn was coming. I cut the engine and sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, staring at my small seaside cottage with its peeling blue paint and sagging front porch. Home. Safe. Ordinary. Everything I'd left behind the moment I'd pulled this stranger from the water. "I need to get you inside," I said, my voice flat with exhaustion. He nodded, already reaching for the door handle. Getting him from the car to my couch was a blur of awkward maneuvering and suppressed groans of pain. He was trying not to show how badly he was hurt, but I could see it in the way he held himself, the shallow breathing, the tightness around his eyes. Once I had him settled, I locked the front door, checked every window, pulled all the blinds. Then I stood in my tiny living room, dripping seawater onto the hardwood floor, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. He was already unconscious again, head tilted back, chest rising and falling in a rhythm that was too shallow for comfort. Blood had soaked through his white dress shirt, spreading in dark patches across the gray suit jacket he still wore. I had work to do. My clinic kit was in the bathroom cabinet. I grabbed it along with clean towels, rubbing alcohol, and the suture set I kept for emergencies. When I returned, his eyes were still closed, but his jaw was clenched. Conscious then, or close to it. "I need to clean that cut," I said, kneeling beside the couch. "This is going to hurt." He didn't respond, but his hand moved slightly, palm up. Permission. I worked in silence, cleaning away the dry blood, assessing the wound. The gash above his eyebrow was deep, extending into his hairline. It would scar. I threaded the curved needle, tied off the suture, and began stitching. His breathing hitched once, but he didn't move, didn't speak, just endured. 6 stitches. Small, neat, the way I'd been taught. When I finished, I taped gauze over the wound and sat back on my heels. "You should be in a hospital," I said to the silence. "I should be dead." His eyes opened, those pale gray irises finding mine. "You have complicated that plan significantly." I was about to respond when I heard it. The low rumble of engines, multiple engines, coming closer. My stomach dropped. I moved to the window, careful to stay behind the blinds, and peered through the narrow gap. 5 black SUVs rolled up my driveway, in perfect formation. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." Behind me, the stranger sat up too fast, hissed in pain, then locked his eyes on the window. "What pattern?" he asked sharply. "How do they arrive?" 5 vehicles. Black, moving together. Something changed his face. Not fear exactly. Recognition. They found us faster than I thought. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something other than command in his expression. Concern. When they knock, you know nothing. You saw nothing. You found nothing. Understand. The knock came before I could answer. Not a polite tap, but a heavy, rhythmic pounding. 3 slow beats, pause, 2 fast beats. A pattern. The stranger's entire body went rigid. He knew that knock. "Lock the door," he whispered urgently. "Chain it. Say you found nothing." My hand shook as I moved to the door, checked that the deadbolt was engaged, slid the chain into place. Through the peephole, I could see 3 men in dark windbreakers standing on my porch. 2 more flanked my driveway. One held a tablet, screen glowing in the pre-dawn dimness. The knock came again, harder this time. "Open up," a voice called. American accent, flat and professional. "Coastal emergency response. We're checking residences for crash survivors." I pressed my eye to the peephole again. The man in front wore no badge, no identification. The bulge under his windbreaker was unmistakably a shoulder holster. I already talked to the real emergency responders. I called through the door, keeping my voice steady despite my racing pulse. There's nothing here. Ma'am, we need to verify. Protocol. I don't see any badges, I said. Come back with proper identification. The men exchanged glances. The one with the tablet tapped the screen, angling it so his companion could see. Even from my limited vantage point, I could make out thermal imagery, orange and red shapes against a blue background. The crash site, the beach, 2 heat signatures near the waterline, then 1 heat signature moving inland. They had been watching. They knew. Ma'am, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, the lead man said, his tone shifting from professional to threatening. Open the door. Leave, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. Or I call the real police. Another exchanged glance. The tablet man raised his phone, pointed it at my door, and took a photograph. I heard the artificial shutter sound even through the wood. He was photographing my license plate number, visible where my car sat in the driveway. Have it your way, the lead man said. Then, to his companions, loud enough for me to hear, log this address. We'll be back. I watched through the peephole as they retreated to their vehicles, engines starting in sequence. The SUVs rolled back down my driveway, gravel crunching under heavy tires, and disappeared down the coastal road. I stood frozen at the door, listening to the silence they left behind. You can breathe now, the stranger said from the couch. I turned to face him. He was sitting up properly now, one hand pressed to his ribs, the other resting on the couch arm. In the growing morning light filtering through the blinds, I could see him more clearly. The strong features, the dark hair beginning to dry into soft waves, the stubble shadowing his jaw. The gold ring on his right hand caught the light. Who are you? I asked quietly. My name is Ramiro Picho. He said it like he expected me to recognize it. Why I didn't react? Something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe. The jet did not malfunction. It was sabotaged. Someone planted explosives in the fuel line, timed to detonate mid-flight over the ocean. No witnesses. No survivors. A tragic accident. Then how are you alive? Because I am paranoid. A bitter smile touched his lips. I always fly with a parachute. I jumped seconds before detonation. But I was too low, hit the water too hard, and the impact knocked me unconscious. The jet came down on top of me. He met my eyes. You pulled me from wreckage that was meant to be my coffin. I sank into the armchair across from him, my legs suddenly unable to hold my weight. Who wants you dead badly enough to blow up a plane? The list is longer than you would believe. He leaned forward slightly, wincing. But those men just now, they work for the same people who sabotaged the jet. They are here to finish what the bomb started. And because you saved me, because you were seen pulling me from the water, he paused, letting the implication hang in the air. You should not have opened your door to strangers, Rosanna Davide. Ice flooded my veins. How do you know my name? He gestured toward my coffee table, where my work badge lay next to my keys. Mercy Point Clinic. Rosanna Davide, RN. They know it too now, he said softly. They photographed your license plate. They will run it. By noon, they will know everything about you. Where you work, where you shop, who you love, and they will use all of it. I stared at him, this bleeding stranger on my couch who had just upended my entire existence. What do I do? You survive, Ramiro Picho said. And for that, you will need me as much as I need you. The words hung between us like a verdict. I opened my mouth to argue, to tell him I didn't need anyone, that I could handle this myself. Then my phone rang. I pulled it from my pocket. Unknown number. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Do not answer, Ramiro said sharply. They're testing to see if you are home. I'll let it ring through to voicemail. Seconds later, a text message appeared. We know you're there. My hand started shaking again. Ramiro held out his hand. Give me the phone. I did. He powered it down, removed the battery, and set both pieces on the coffee table. They can track these. You do not use this again. That's my only phone. Your work will have to wait. He shifted on the couch, suppressing a grimace. I need to make a call. Do you have a landline? Who still has a landline? Smart people who value their privacy. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim black phone I hadn't seen before. Water damaged, but apparently still functional. He dialed, spoke rapidly in Italian, then switched to accented English. Yes, the address I'm sending you. 1 hour. Bring everything. He ended the call and looked at me. My doctor is coming. You have a personal doctor who makes house calls? I have many things that will surprise you. He leaned his head back against the couch, and I saw how pale he'd become. The blood loss was catching up with him. You should eat something. Rest. While we wait. I'm not hungry. It was true. My stomach was twisted into knots so tight I couldn't imagine swallowing anything. Then at least change clothes. You are still wet. I looked down at myself. My thin undershirt was plastered to my skin, my black pants heavy with salt water. I was shivering and hadn't even noticed. I retreated to my bedroom, peeled off the wet clothes, and stood under a hot shower until my skin turned pink. When I emerged wrapped in sweatpants and a clean t-shirt, I found Ramiro exactly where I'd left him, eyes closed, breathing shallow. For a moment, I thought he'd passed out again. Then he spoke without opening his eyes. There are men positioned around your house. Mine, not theirs. You are safe for now. How long is now? Long enough. The doctor arrived exactly 1 hour later, just as dawn fully broke over the ocean. I watched through the blinds as a plain white van pulled into my driveway. A woman emerged, late 40s, dark hair pulled into a severe knot, carrying 2 heavy cases. She didn't knock. Ramiro had already moved to unlock the door. Teresa, he greeted her in Italian, then switched to English for my benefit. This is Rosanna. She saved my life. Teresa's sharp brown eyes assessed me in a single sweep, then dismissed me entirely. She was already moving toward Ramiro, setting her cases on my coffee table and snapping them open. The interior looked like a portable surgical suite. Sit, she commanded. Shirt off. Ramiro complied, wincing as he shrugged out of the ruined suit jacket and began unbuttoning his shirt. When the fabric fell away, I saw his torso properly for the first time. Muscle and old scars, the landscape of a man who'd survived violence before. But it was the fresh wound in his left shoulder that made Teresa curse under her breath. You said broken ribs and lacerations, she said accusingly. I said I survived a plane crash. She pulled on surgical gloves and began probing the wound. I moved closer without thinking, my nurse's training overriding everything else. The entry point was small, high on the shoulder, surrounded by bruising. That's a bullet wound, I said, very observant. Teresa glanced at me with something like approval. 3 days old, I would estimate. The wound is infected, and there's still something inside. She looked at Ramiro. This will hurt. Everything hurts. Just remove it. I watched as Teresa worked, efficient and precise. She injected local anesthetic around the wound site, then used a scalpel to widen the entry point. Ramiro's jaw clenched, but he didn't make a sound. Teresa inserted forceps into the wound, probing. Metal scraped against bone. Then she pulled, and a small, twisted piece of metal emerged, bloody and misshapen. Bullet fragment, she announced, dropping it into a steel tray with a clink. You were lucky it did not hit the artery. She irrigated the wound, packed it with antibiotic gauze, and began suturing. How did you get shot 3 days ago, and I'm only hearing about it now? I was handling it. Clearly, she tied off the last suture with more force than necessary. You need intravenous antibiotics. You need rest. You need to stop being shot at. I will work on that last one. Teresa turned to me. You were a nurse? Emergency room. How did you? The way you watched me work. You know what you were seeing. She began repacking her cases. He will need the dressing changed twice daily. I am leaving supplies. If he develops a fever above 101, if the wound shows red streaking, if he becomes confused, you call me immediately. She handed me a card with only a phone number printed on it. I assume you know how to follow instructions? I do. Good. Keep him alive. He is terrible at doing it himself. She snapped her cases shut and headed for the door, pausing to speak to Ramiro in rapid Italian. He responded in the same language, his tone serious. She nodded once and left. The silence after her departure felt heavy. 3 days ago, I said slowly. Someone shot you 3 days ago, and then they blew up your plane. How many people want you dead? Enough. He buttoned a clean black shirt Teresa had apparently brought him, moving carefully to avoid stressing the fresh sutures. I control shipping routes along the entire western coast. Import, export, everything that moves on the water passes through terminals I own or operate. That kind of control makes rivals nervous. The Corsini family has been trying to edge into my territory for 2 years. The bullet was their first warning. The bomb was their final answer. I sank into the armchair, processing. You're telling me this is about business? I'm telling you this is about billions of dollars in power and territory. Men kill for much less. And I'm caught in the middle because I pulled you out of the water. It wasn't a question. Your face is on satellite footage, thermal imaging, night vision, possibly even telephoto lenses from passing ships. They know a woman dragged me to shore. They know she drove a Toyota Corolla. They ran your plates. You met my eyes. By now they know everything about you. Where you live, where you work, where you buy your coffee, who your friends are, whether you have family. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the arms of the chair. My parents are in Florida. I haven't seen them in 3 years. I don't have siblings. I stopped, realizing what I was about to say. I don't have anyone. That is fortunate, Ramiro said quietly. It means they have less leverage. Less leverage for what? For making you tell them where I am. For using you to draw me out. He leaned forward despite the obvious pain it cost him. I can give you money. Enough to disappear. New identity, new city, new life. I have people who can arrange this within 24 hours. You take the offer, you walk away, and you never think about me or this night again. I stared at him. You're serious. Completely. And if I say no, then you stay. You help me. And when this is over, if we both survive, you walk away anyway. But at least you walk away with the truth. What truth? That you are stronger than you believe. Braver than you know. His gray eyes held mine. You dove into the ocean to save a stranger. That is not something a weak person does. I was about to respond when the world exploded. The kitchen window shattered inward, glass spraying across the floor. Something punched through the opposite wall with a sound like a hammer hitting wood. For a heartbeat, I sat frozen, not understanding. Then Ramiro was moving, launching himself off the couch with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for an injured man. He hit me like a linebacker, driving me out of the chair and onto the floor. We landed hard, his body covering mine, his hand pressing my head down. Stay down, he hissed. Another window shattered. This time I saw the small hole appear in the wall above where Ramiro had been sitting seconds before, perfectly round, trailing plaster dust. Bullets. Someone was shooting at us. Ramiro's weight pressed me into the hardwood floor. I felt something warm and wet spreading across my chest and realized a shoulder wound had torn open. Blood soaked through his shirt, through my t-shirt, sticky and hot against my skin. Sniper, he said, his voice tight with pain and fury. Long range, professional. They are not trying to scare us. They are trying to finish this. What do we do? We survive the next 60 seconds. He shifted slightly, reaching under the couch and pulling out a handgun I hadn't known was there. Then we leave. My men are already moving on the shooter's position, but we cannot stay here. This is my home. Not anymore. He looked down at me, his face inches from mine, blood from his eyebrow cut dripping onto my cheek. Now you are in it, Rosanna. There is no out. 5 minutes, Ramiro said, rolling off me and staying low. Pack one bag. Essentials only. Clothing, medication, documents you cannot replace. Nothing electronic. Move. I army crawled across my own living room floor toward the bedroom, glass crunching under my elbows. My hand shook so badly I could barely grip the doorframe. Behind me, Ramiro spoke rapidly into his phone, still in Italian, his voice cold and commanding despite the blood spreading across his shirt. In my bedroom, I yanked a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing things in without thinking. Underwear, jeans, shirts, my spare work shoes. My nursing license from the desk drawer. The photo of my parents I kept meaning to frame. My passport from the lockbox under the bed. I was zipping the bag when I heard engines outside, multiple vehicles arriving fast. My heart seized. They were back. But then Ramiro called from the living room. "It is my people. Come." I emerged to find 3 men in dark tactical gear moving through my cottage with professional efficiency. One was checking sight lines from the shattered windows. Another was speaking into a radio. The third, broader and older than the others, approached Ramiro with the familiarity of someone who'd earned the right. "Capo," he said, then switched to English when he saw me. "We have the perimeter." Shooter was positioned on the ridge, 800 meters. He is gone now, but he will not be gone for long. His eyes flicked to me, assessing. "She comes with us?" "She comes," Ramiro confirmed. "Then we move now? The boat is waiting." "Mateo," Ramiro said, stopping him. "The car." Understanding passed between them. Mateo nodded, his expression grim. "Consider it done." I didn't understand until we were outside, being hustled toward 2 black SUVs idling in my driveway, and I looked back to see Mateo pouring something from a jerry can over my Toyota. The smell of gasoline hit me even from 10 feet away. "Wait," I started to say, but Ramiro's hand closed around my arm. "They need to believe we died here. The fire will destroy evidence, make identification difficult. It buys us time." He guided me into the back of the lead SUV. "Your car was already compromised. They knew the make, the model, the plates. It was a liability." "That was my car," I said numbly as we pulled away. Through the rear window, I watched Mateo drop a match. Flames erupted, orange and hungry, consuming the last piece of my normal life. "You will have another," Ramiro said. "Better." We didn't go far, just down the coastal road to a private marina I'd passed 100 times and never really seen. The gate opened as we approached, no guard visible, but clearly someone watching. The SUVs rolled onto the dock where a sleek speedboat waited, engines already running, a pilot in dark clothes standing ready. "In," Mateo ordered, helping me aboard first. Ramiro followed, moving stiffly, one hand pressed to his shoulder where fresh blood darkened the black shirt Teresa had given him. The speedboat launched before I'd even found a seat, acceleration pressing me back against the leather cushions. The marina lights fell away behind us as we cut into the open ocean, the hull slapping against waves with jarring force. Spray soaked my face. I gripped the railing and tried not to be sick. We ran dark for 30 minutes. No lights, just the pilot navigating by instruments and moon glow. Then ahead, rising from the cliffs like something out of a dream, I saw it. The villa, glass and steel cantilevered over the void, hanging suspended above a 100-foot drop to the rocks and surf below. Lights glowed warm behind floor-to-ceiling windows. It looked impossible, like it should collapse under its own weight, but instead it perched there defiant and beautiful and completely inaccessible except by the water. "Welcome to the safest place on the western coast," Ramiro said beside me. "No road access. The only approach is by boat or by the funicular from the clifftop, and I control both." The pilot brought us into a boat house carved into the cliff base. As we docked, I saw the funicular he'd mentioned, a glass and steel car on rails that ran straight up the rock face at a dizzying angle. Mateo ushered us inside, pressed a button, and we began to rise. My stomach dropped as the ocean fell away below us. Through the glass walls, I could see everything: the black water, the jagged rocks, the dizzying height. Then we crested the cliff edge and slid into the villa's lower level. I forgot to breathe. The interior was all clean lines and subtle lighting. Polished concrete floors, exposed beams, furniture that looked expensive and uncomfortable. A woman in chef's whites worked in the open kitchen. A man who could only be a bodyguard stood by the windows, earpiece visible. Everything smelled like money and control. "Teresa," Ramiro called, and the doctor appeared from side hallway. She took one look at his blood-soaked shirt and sighed. "Upstairs. Now, I will re-suture. In a moment." He turned to me. "Rosanna, this is your home until the threat is neutralized. Bianca runs the household. She will show you to a room. Whatever you need, ask her." An older woman materialized, gray hair pulled back, kind eyes that nonetheless missed nothing. Come, dear. You look exhausted. I was too numb to argue. I followed Bianca up a floating staircase to the second level, where she opened a door onto a guest suite that was bigger than my entire cottage. A king bed, a sitting area, an ensuite bathroom with a rainfall shower and a tub that overlooked the ocean through privacy glass. Rest, Bianca said gently. Someone will bring you dinner. If you need anything, press the intercom button by the bed. She left me alone in the silence. I set my duffel bag on the bed and walked to the window. Below, the ocean crashed against rocks that looked like teeth. Above, stars I couldn't see from my cottage blazed in a sky unpolluted by light. I was in a fortress hanging over the void, surrounded by armed men, bound to a stranger who controlled things I didn't understand. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt oddly calm. No, maybe, or in shock. I needed to understand what I got myself into. After a quick shower and a change into clean jeans and a sweater for my bag, I left the room and went looking for answers. The villa wasn't large, just 3 levels stacked against the cliff. I found Ramiro on the main floor in a room I hadn't seen before. The door was ajar. I pushed it open and stopped. The space was dark except for the glow of multiple screens mounted on the walls. Satellite feeds showed coastlines, shipping lanes, ports I didn't recognize. A large table in the center held maps marked with colored pins. Radio equipment hummed in the corner. And on a corkboard by the door, pinned among surveillance photos and typed reports, I saw my face. The photo was from the beach. Nighttime, grainy, clearly pulled from some kind of long-range camera. I was bent over Ramiro's body, performing CPR. Beside it, someone had pinned a printout of my nursing license, my home address, my vehicle registration. Above the photo, written in neat block letters, liability/asset. I had not decided yet, Ramiro said from behind me. I spun. He stood in the doorway, fresh bandages visible at the collar of a clean black dress shirt, black trousers replacing the ruined suit. He'd showered, shaved. He looked almost human now, except for the coldness in his eyes as he watched me stare at my own photo. Which am I? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Liability or asset? He moved past me into the room, pressed a button, and the screens lit up with new information. Ship manifests, port schedules, GPS tracking showing dozens of vessels moving across a map of the Pacific coast. This is what I control, he said, gesturing to the screens. Every ship that moves through these waters either pays me, works for me, or knows to stay out of my way. The Corsini family wants this. They have been pushing into my territory for 2 years, undercutting prices, bribing port officials, and now, finally, trying to kill me. He turned to face me. You saved me. That makes you valuable to me and dangerous to them. That doesn't answer my question. The answer depends on you. He moved to the corkboard, unpinned my photo, and held it up to the light. A liability runs, panics, makes mistakes that get people killed. An asset adapts, learns, becomes useful. Useful how? You're a nurse. My men get injured. They cannot go to hospitals without questions being asked. Teresa cannot be everywhere at once. He set the photo down on the table. You could save more than just my life. You could save theirs. I looked at the screens, the maps, the military precision of his operation. And if I say no, if I take the money and the new identity you offered, then you leave. Tonight, you disappear, and I make certain the Corsinis never find you. He met my eyes, but you will spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if that stranger at the coffee shop is just a stranger, wondering if you're truly safe or just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And if I stay, then you are all in, part of this family, with everything that entails, protection, purpose, and danger in equal measure. He paused. The choice is yours, Rosanna, but you need to make it now. I looked at my photo on the table, at the question written above it. Liability or asset? Show me, I said. Show me everything. If I'm going to choose, I choose with my eyes open. Something shifted in Ramiro's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Then welcome to the family. 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. I learned the rhythms of the villa, the faces of the men who guarded it, The way Teresa cataloged her supplies with the precision of someone who'd stitched too many wounds in too many dark places. I treated a guard with an infected hand, another with a sprained ankle he'd been ignoring for a week. They called me Signorina and kept their distance, respectful but wary. Ramiro healed faster than he should have. By the third morning, he was moving without the careful stiffness, the color returning to his face. He spent hours in the war room, speaking Italian into encrypted phones, studying the screens that tracked ships moving up and down the coast. Sometimes he explained things to me. Which ports were secure, which officials were bought, which rival crews were pushing boundaries. I absorbed it all like a student cramming for an exam I never signed up for. Dawn on the fourth day found me awake before sunrise, unable to sleep. The guest room was comfortable, almost too comfortable, all that space and silence pressing down on me. I pulled on sweatpants and padded downstairs in bare feet, thinking I'd make coffee and watch the sun rise over the ocean. I was halfway down the floating staircase when I heard the voice. Low, urgent, coming from the kitchen. I froze, every instinct screaming something was wrong. The voice spoke in Italian, too quiet for me to make out words, but the tone was unmistakable, pleading, desperate. I crept down the remaining steps and peered around the corner. Matteo stood by the kitchen window, his back to me, a phone pressed to his ear. Not one of the sleek, encrypted devices I'd seen Ramiro use. This was different. Cheap, disposable. A burner phone. I have the coordinates, he was saying in English now, switching mid-sentence. Yes, I am certain. The villa, the boathouse, the funicular access codes. Everything. A pause. No, he suspects nothing. He trusts me. Another pause, longer this time. My sister. You promised safe passage for my sister. I want confirmation before I send anything. My blood turned to ice. I must have made a sound, some small betrayed gasp, because Matteo spun around. For a heartbeat, we stared at each other. Then he moved, hand reaching under his jacket. Ramiro! I screamed, the name tearing from my throat as I threw myself backward. Matteo's hand stopped. He didn't draw the weapon I knew he carried. Instead, his face crumpled, all that hard professionalism dissolving into something broken and desperate. You do not understand, he said. I understand you're selling him out. My voice shook. I understand you're the reason they found us in my cottage. You told them. They have my sister. His hand dropped to his side, the burner phone still clutched in his fist. Lucia. She is 23 years old. A teacher. She has nothing to do with this life, but they took her anyway. They said they would send her back to me piece by piece unless I give them what they want. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Ramiro appeared, shirtless, gun already drawn, 2 guards flanking him. His eyes swept the scene in an instant. Me pressed against the wall, Matteo with the phone, the guilt written across both our faces. Explain, Ramiro said, his voice flat and cold. Now! I opened my mouth, but Matteo spoke first. It is not what you think, Capo. Then what is it? Ramiro's gun didn't waver. Because it looks like my most trusted lieutenant making a phone call at dawn on a burner phone. So please, Matteo, tell me what I'm thinking wrong. Matteo's shoulders sagged. They have Lucia. The name hung in the air. I saw something flicker across Ramiro's face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. He lowered the gun slightly. When? 4 days ago. The same day you went down. Matteo's voice broke. They sent me a video. She was in a basement somewhere, tied to a chair, crying. They said I had 24 hours to decide. Give them your location or watch her die. And you said yes. What would you have done? Matteo's voice rose, desperate. She's my blood, my only family. You know what they do to people who refuse them. You have seen the bodies. I have also seen the bodies of people who trust traitors. Ramiro handed his gun to one of the guards and pulled out his phone. Show me the security footage from the past week. All of it. Every entrance, every communication, every moment. 20 minutes later, we stood in the war room watching Matteo on the screens. 3 separate calls on the burner phone. Twice he'd left the villa on supply runs and returned within the specified time, but with stops unaccounted for. Once he'd been caught on the exterior cameras, photographing the funicular mechanism with his personal phone. The evidence was damning and complete. Ramiro watched it all in silence, his face carved from stone. When the footage ended, he turned to Mateo. Did you give them the coordinates? Not yet. I was confirming Lucia was still alive before. Did you give them the coordinates? Ramiro repeated, each word precise. No, but you would have. Mateo said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Ramiro nodded once. Take him to the wine cellar. The guards moved immediately, grabbing Mateo's arms. He didn't resist, just looked at Ramiro with something like relief. What about Lucia? I will find her, Ramiro said. I will bring her home safe. You have my word. Thank you, Capo. Thank you. But you will not be alive to see her. Ramiro's voice didn't change, didn't rise, didn't add inflection. Just stated a fact. You betrayed the family. The sentence is death. Take him down. They dragged Mateo toward the back stairwell that led to the lower levels. I heard him begging in Italian, his voice echoing off stone walls, growing fainter as they descended. Ramiro stood motionless, watching them go. You can't, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. He was trying to save his sister. That's not betrayal, that's love. It is both. Ramiro turned to face me, and his eyes were empty of everything but cold certainty. He chose his sister over the family, over me, over every man in this villa who would have helped him if he had just asked. Instead, he made a deal with the people trying to kill us all. What do you think they would have done once they had these coordinates? Come with flowers and apologies? But his sister will be found and brought to safety. I keep my promises. He moved toward the stairwell. Stay here. No. I followed him down the steps before I could reconsider. You said I was part of this family. You said I choose with my eyes open. Then I see this. I see all of it. He stopped mid-step, looked back at me, then nodded once. Then come. But what you see cannot be unseen. The wine cellar was carved into the cliff rock, cool and dark, and smelling of earth and age. Mateo sat in a chair in the center of the room, hands bound behind him, 2 guards standing watch. He looked up when we entered, eyes red but dry now. I am sorry, Capo, he said quietly. For what it is worth, I am sorry. How much did they offer? Ramiro asked, his tone almost conversational. 10 million. New identities for Lucia and me. Safe passage to South America. And you believe them? I had to believe something. Mateo smiled bitterly. You cannot understand. You have no family left to love, no weakness they can exploit. I thought I was protecting her. You were protecting yourself. If you truly wanted to save Lucia, you would have come to me first. Instead, you made yourself a traitor. Ramiro pulled a handgun from the guard's holster, checked the chamber, racked the slide. I'm sorry too, old friend. For what it is worth. It is worth everything. Mateo straightened in the chair, chin up. Will you make it quick? Always. Then I die with honor. Tell Lucia I loved her. I will tell her you died bravely. That is better than the truth. The shot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space, echoing off stone walls until it sounded like a dozen guns firing. Mateo's head snapped back, and then he was still. The ringing in my ears drowned out everything else. I stood frozen, watching blood pool on the ancient stone floor, spreading in dark fingers toward the drain someone had thoughtfully installed. This was planned. This space was designed for this. Ramiro handed the gun back to the guard. Clean this up. Respectfully. He gets a proper burial. See to it. Yes, Capo. I made it up 2 flights of stairs before my stomach rebelled. I barely reached the bathroom sink before I was retching, heaving up nothing because I hadn't eaten. My hand shook so badly I could barely turn on the water. Ramiro appeared behind me, handing me a towel. Breathe. You killed him. I executed a traitor. There's a difference. He was trying to save his sister. He was trying to save himself using his sister as an excuse. Ramiro turned on the tap, began washing his hands with methodical precision. Water ran red, then pink, then clear. If he had come to me, I would have sent 20 men to find Lucia. I would have burned down the Corsini operation building by building until they released her. Instead, he chose to deal with them directly, and that choice killed him. I stared at his hands, now clean, no evidence of what he'd just done. How do you do this? How do you just kill someone you've known for years? Because if I do not, more people die. Mateo's betrayal would have led them here. They would have come in force, dozens of soldiers, explosives, no mercy. Teresa would be dead. Bianca, the guards. You. He dried his hands, met my eyes in the mirror. One death to prevent 20. That is the mathematics of leadership. That's not mathematics. That's murder. Call it what you want. The result is the same. He reached under his jacket and pulled out a second handgun, smaller than the first, and held it out to me. Take it. I stared at the weapon. What? You need to understand something, Rosanna. Betrayal in this world does not get a second chance. Next time you see it, you do not have time to ask questions or debate morality. You end it immediately, or it ends you. He pressed the gun in my hand, closed my fingers around the grip. This is a Glock 43, 9mm, 6 rounds. Safety here. Sight along the top. Squeeze, do not pull. If someone betrays this family, you put 2-round center mass. Can you do that? I'm a nurse. I save lives. And now you will learn to take them. His hand covered mine on the gun. Because the people trying to kill us do not care about your oath. They will use your compassion as a weapon. They will exploit your hesitation. And they will put a bullet in your head while you are still deciding whether killing them is moral. He released my hand. Keep the gun. Get familiar with it. Tomorrow, I teach you how to use it. He left me standing there, the weight of the weapon foreign and terrible in my palm, Mateo's blood still drying on my hands from where I'd gripped the sink. I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same brown eyes, but something had changed in the past 4 days. Something fundamental and irreversible. I had watched a man die, and I hadn't stopped it. I had watched a man die, and I hadn't stopped it. The Glock sat on my bathroom counter for 2 hours while I stared at it, willing myself to feel something other than numb. Eventually, I picked it up, checked the safety like Ramiro had shown me, and tucked it into the waistband of my jeans. The weight felt wrong, foreign, but I left it there anyway. By the time I emerged from my room, night had fallen. The villa was quiet except for the low murmur of voices from the war room. I found Ramiro there, surrounded by 3 of his men, all of them studying a tablet that displayed what looked like shipping container layouts. The Corsinis are moving tonight, one of the guards was saying in accented English. Our source inside their operation confirms it. They plan to hit Terminal 7 at midnight, seize the containers, and hold the position until their reinforcements arrive from the north. Ramiro's jaw tightened. Terminal 7 handles 60% of our pharmaceutical imports. If they take it, they control the supply chain for every hospital from here to Seattle. He looked up, saw me in the doorway, and something flickered across his face. Concern, maybe. Rosanna, you should not be here for this. Where should I be? I moved into the room, ignoring the way the guards shifted uncomfortably. You said I'm part of this family. That means I see everything, remember? Seeing and participating are different things. I'm a trauma nurse. I've treated gunshot wounds, stab wounds, every kind of emergency you can imagine. If you're going into a fight, you need someone who can keep your men alive afterward. I met his eyes, refusing to look away. I'm coming with you. One of the guards made a disapproving sound. Ramiro silenced him with a glance, then studied me for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. Teresa stays here to maintain security. That leaves us without medical support in the field. He gestured to the tablet. The terminal is a maze of shipping containers. Tight spaces, limited sight lines. If shooting starts, you stay behind cover and you do not move until I tell you. Understand? I understand. Then suit up. We leave in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, I stood in the villa's armory, watching Ramiro transform. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by black tactical pants, black boots, a black vest with ceramic plates that could stop rifle rounds. He moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, loading magazines, securing a radio earpiece. This was a different man than the one who'd been bleeding on my couch 5 days ago. This was the man who controlled the western coast. He caught me staring and offered a grim smile. Second thoughts. About 100. I touched the medical bag Teresa had packed for me. But I meant what I said. You need me there. I know. He handed me a vest similar to his own, lighter but still armored. Put this on and stay close to me. Always. The drive to the port took 40 minutes, two SUVs running dark through industrial streets. We parked 3 blocks from Terminal 7 and approached on foot, moving through shadows between warehouses. The terminal loomed ahead, a forest of shipping containers stacked 4 high, bathed in the orange glow of sodium lights. Ramiro's radio crackled. Team 2 in position. North entrance secured. Team 3 ready. South side clear. Ramiro keyed his mic. All teams, this is lead. Remember, we are here to defend what is ours, not start a war. Lethal force only if necessary. Move in. We entered the terminal through a maintenance gate, the metal screaming softly as it swung open. Inside, the containers created narrow canyons of steel, every shadow deep enough to hide an army. Fog rolled in from the harbor, turning the scene into something from a nightmare. Our footsteps echoed too loud in the silence. Then the silence shattered. Muzzle flashes erupted from between containers 30 yards ahead. Bullets sparked off steel, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. One of our guards went down hard, clutching his leg. Ramiro returned fire, controlled bursts that sent the shooters scrambling for cover. Contact, East Corridor, he shouted into the radio. Multiple hostiles. Everything became chaos. Men in dark clothes poured from between containers, at least a dozen of them, weapons raised. Ramiro's teams converged, and suddenly the terminal was a war zone. I dropped behind a container as bullets punched through the air where I'd been standing, my heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Rosanna, Ramiro shouted. Stay down. A guard fell 10 feet from me, blood spreading across his shoulder. Not dead, but wounded badly. I saw him trying to drag himself behind cover and failing. Without thinking, I moved. I don't remember crossing the open space. I just remember my hands closing around the guard's vest, hauling him backward with strength I didn't know I had. Bullets kicked up concrete, dust beside us. Someone was screaming. Maybe me. Then we were behind a container, and I was ripping open my medical bag with shaking hands. The wound was high, near the collarbone. Arterial bleed. Blood pulsed between my fingers as I pressed gauze to the hole, using my whole body weight to maintain pressure. The guard's eyes were wide with shock and pain. Stay with me, I told him, my voice steadier than I felt. You're going to be fine. Just breathe. The firefight raged around us. I heard Ramiro's voice cutting through the chaos, directing his men, coordinating the defense. More shots. The distinctive thump of someone hitting the ground hard. Then, closer, footsteps running toward our position. A man in dark clothes appeared around the container, gun raised. He saw me, saw the wounded guard, and for a heartbeat we just stared at each other. Then he swung the weapon toward me. The shot came from my left. The man jerked backward, a red flower blooming on his chest, and collapsed. Ramiro appeared, gun still raised, breathing hard. Blood stained his side where something had torn through his shirt. You're hit, I said. Graze. I have had worse. He moved past me, checking the fallen man, then keyed his radio. All teams, report. North secure. 3 hostiles down, 2 in custody. South secure. We have 4 runners heading for the water. Let them run, Ramiro ordered. Secure the perimeter and sweep for stragglers. Terminal is ours. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Police, probably, responding to reports of gunfire. Ramiro's men moved with practiced efficiency, gathering weapons, checking bodies, erasing evidence of what had happened here. I kept pressure on the guard's wound until the bleeding slowed, then packed it properly and secured the dressing. He'd need surgery, but he'd live. Around me, 3 other guards nursed minor injuries. One had taken a round through the bicep. Another had shrapnel cuts across his face from a ricochet. I moved between them, assessing, treating, falling into the familiar rhythm of emergency medicine. By the time I finished, police lights were visible at the terminal gates. Ramiro spoke briefly with someone on his phone, and the lights stopped approaching. Whoever he'd called had enough influence to hold back the entire police department. He appeared beside me as I was repacking the medical bag, his hands dark with powder residue and blood. How many did we lose? None. 2 serious injuries, 3 minor. They'll all make it if we get them proper care soon. Something in his expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or respect. You did well. Better than well. I did my job. Your job is saving lives in a hospital, not in a war zone. He reached out, and I flinched before I could stop myself. But he just touched my forehead gently, his fingers coming away bloody. I hadn't realized I'd been hit by debris. You could have stayed safe at the villa. You chose to come anyway. You said I was part of the family, and now you have proven it. You pull me close, pressing a kiss to my blood-smeared forehead, the gesture surprisingly gentle from a man who just killed at least 2 people. You just saved my empire, Rosanna. These men you treated, they are the ones who keep the terminals running, who maintain control, who ensure nothing slips through the cracks. Without them, the Corsinis would have taken everything. I'm a nurse. This is what I do. No. He drew back, looking at me with something fierce and possessive in his eyes. This is what you were. Now you're something more. You are famiglia. Mine. The word hung between us, heavy with meaning I was only beginning to understand. Behind us, his men were loading the wounded into SUVs, moving with the urgency of people who knew the clock was ticking. The sirens were getting closer despite whoever Ramiro had called. We need to go, one of the guards said. Ramiro nodded, but didn't move, still looking at me. Are you ready for this life? Truly. I thought about Mateo's execution, about the firefight I'd just survived, about the blood under my fingernails and the weight of the Glock still tucked against my spine, about how I'd crossed that open space under fire without hesitation because someone needed help. I don't know if anyone's ever ready, I said quietly. But I'm here. I'm staying. Then let us go home. He took my hand, the gesture natural despite everything, and led me toward the waiting SUV. As we pulled away from the terminal, I looked back at the maze of containers, the emergency lights now flooding the scene, the evidence of violence being methodically erased. Somewhere in that chaos, the Corsini family had learned an expensive lesson. Ramiro's territory was not for taking, and I had helped make sure they learned it. As we pulled away from the terminal, I looked back at the maze of containers, the emergency lights now flooding the scene, the evidence of violence being methodically erased. Somewhere in that chaos, the Corsini family had learned an expensive lesson. Ramiro's territory was not for taking, and I had helped make sure they learned it. The ride back to the villa was quiet except for the low murmur of radio chatter as Ramiro coordinated the cleanup. The wounded guard I'd stabilized was already being transferred to a private facility Teresa had arranged. The others would be treated at the villa. No hospitals, no questions, no paper trail connecting any of them to what had happened at Terminal 7. I stared out the window at the dark ocean, my hands still shaking slightly from adrenaline come down. The blood on my fingers had dried to a rust-brown crust. I'd saved lives tonight, but I'd also been part of something that had ended lives. The moral math of that didn't balance the way it should have. You are thinking too much, Ramiro said beside me. Someone has to. And what are you thinking? I turned to face him. That 3 weeks ago, I was a nurse driving home from a shift. Now I'm patching up gunshot wounds in a shipping terminal while people try to kill me. How does that happen? You made choices. Each one led to the next. He pressed a hand to his side where the bullet had grazed him, his expression tightening briefly. You could have left me in the water. You could have turned me over to the emergency responders. You could have taken the money I offered and disappeared. Instead, you are here. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe you are exactly where you were supposed to be. Back at the villa, Teresa was waiting with her medical kit and a look that could have curdled milk. She took one glance at Ramiro's torn shirt and the blood seeping through and pointed toward the kitchen table. Sit. Now, I told you the shoulder was not healed enough for this. The shoulder is fine. This is new damage. He peeled off the tactical vest and the ruined shirt beneath, revealing the long red furrow across his ribs where a bullet had carved a path through skin and muscle without penetrating deeper. Teresa made a disgusted sound and began cleaning the wound. I moved to help, but she waved me away. You have done enough. Sit. Drink. She gestured to the bottle of whiskey already open on the counter. You both look like you need it. I poured 2 glasses and pushed one toward Ramiro. He took it, downed it in a single swallow, then winced as Teresa applied antiseptic to the wound. "This will scar," she said flatly. "Add it to the collection." She stitched him up with the same efficient brutality I'd come to recognize, then bandaged the wound and stepped back. "No more operations for at least 2 weeks. I mean it, Ramiro. Your body is not invincible." "Noted." He stood, testing his range of motion, then looked at me. "We need to talk. War room. 10 minutes. He disappeared upstairs to change, leaving me alone with Teresa. She studied me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You did well tonight," she said finally. "The men are saying you did not hesitate, that you ran in a fire to save one of them. I'm a nurse. It's what I do. It is more than that, and you know it." She began repacking her kit. "Ramiro is a complicated man. Dangerous, but not cruel. Ruthless, but not without honor. You see this, yes?" I thought about Mateo, about the execution I'd witnessed, about the cold mathematics of one death to prevent 20. I see a man who does terrible things for what he believes are good reasons. That is more insight than most people ever achieve. She snapped her kit closed. "He is offering you something. I can see it in the way he looks at you. Whatever it is, think carefully before you answer." 10 minutes later, I found Ramiro in the war room, freshly showered and wearing clean black clothes. The screens on the walls displayed the aftermath. Terminal 7 secured. Police reports being filed that blamed the gunfire on rival gangs with no connection to his organization. Shipping schedules already adjusted to account for tonight's disruption. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, please." I sat, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was completely gone now, leaving me hollowed out and fragile. Tonight proved something I suspected. He began without preamble. "You are wasted working emergency room shifts for hospital wages. Your skills are worth far more, especially to people like me who cannot seek conventional medical care. Is this the part where you make me an offer?" "Yes." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "I am building something. Not just a criminal enterprise, though that is part of it. A network. Legitimate businesses that provide cover for less legitimate ones. Import-export companies. Shipping terminals. Real estate. And now, a private medical clinic. You want me to run a clinic? I want you to create one. Here, or in the city, wherever you prefer. Full equipment, unlimited budget, legal licensing, and accreditation. On paper, it treats executives, athletes, people who want privacy and discretion. In reality, it treats my men. No questions asked, no records that can be subpoenaed, no connection to hospitals that cooperate with law enforcement." I stared at him. "You're asking me to be your personal doctor. I am asking you to be the chief medical officer of an organization that spans the entire Western Coast. You would save more lives in 1 month than you did in a year at Mercy Point. And you would be protected, compensated, respected, and completely compromised." I stood, suddenly needing to move. If I do this, I can never go back. My nursing license would be worthless if anyone ever found out what I was really doing. I'd be an accessory to everything you do. You already are. His voice was gentle but unyielding. The moment you treated me in your cottage instead of calling the authorities, you became complicit. The moment you lied to those men at your door, you chose a side. Tonight, you treated gunshot wounds without reporting them. That is already a felony. The question is not whether you are in this. The question is whether you accept it. My chest felt tight. He was right. Every choice I'd made had pulled me deeper into his world, and there was no clean way out. Not anymore. "What would you want in return?" I asked quietly. "Loyalty, discretion, your skills when they are needed." He paused. "And you never testify against me or anyone in this organization. No matter what happens, no matter who asks, you know nothing. That's called omerta, the code of silence. That is called survival." I turned to face him. "And if I say yes, what happens to me? Do I just become another person you own?" Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or hurt. "I do not own people, Rosanna. I protect them. I provide for them. In return, they give me loyalty. That is the bargain. A bargain I can't refuse. A bargain you can refuse. Right now, tonight." He stood, moved to the window overlooking the dark ocean. "I will give you the same offer I made before. $2 million. New identity. Safe relocation anywhere in the world. You walk away, and I make certain the Corsinis never find you. Or you stay, and you build something meaningful. The choice is yours. I thought about the guard tonight, the one I dragged behind cover. The way his eyes had cleared when the bleeding stopped, the gratitude in his face. I thought about Teresa's makeshift operating rooms and the men who suffered in silence because they couldn't risk a hospital. I could help them, really help them, save lives that would otherwise be lost to pride and fear and the brutal mathematics of this world. But I'd be doing it on the wrong side of the law. Forever. I have one condition, I heard myself say. Ramiro turned, eyebrows raised. Name it. Mateo's sister. Lucia. You said you'd find her and bring her home safely. I want more than that. I want her relocated somewhere the Corsinis can never reach her. I want her enrolled in college, full tuition paid, living expenses covered. I want her to have the life Mateo died trying to give her. Silence stretched between us. I'd expected resistance, negotiation. Instead, Ramiro smiled. Done. Just like that. Just like that. He moved closer, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Warmth. Approval. You use your one condition not to negotiate better terms for yourself, but to help a dead traitor's sister. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. It doesn't bother you? Spending money on the family of a man who betrayed you. Mateo betrayed me because he loved his sister more than he feared me. That is not evil. It is human. His hand came up, brushing a strand of damp hair from my face. And you asking me to honor his dying wish, that is not weakness. It is proof you're not a monster. I need that reminder sometimes. The gesture was surprisingly intimate. I should have stepped back, maintained distance. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. Your shoulder needs to rest, I said, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. My shoulder is fine. The stitches are holding. His thumb traced my cheekbone, gentle despite the calluses. You have blood on your face still. I know. We should clean it. We should. Neither of us moved. Rosanna. My name and his accented voice sounded different. Softer. I need to know you understand what you are agreeing to. This life, it is not safe. It is not normal. People will try to hurt you to get to me. You will see things you cannot unsee. Do things you cannot undo. There is no going back once you truly commit. I know. And you still want this? I thought about my empty cottage, the lonely shifts at Mercy Point, the way I'd been sleepwalking through a life that felt small and pointless. Then I thought about tonight, the way every second had mattered, the way I'd made a real difference. Saved lives that desperately needed saving. I want this, I said. Whatever this is. His smile was slow and genuine, transforming his face into something younger and less guarded. Then we should celebrate. Celebrate how? Come, I will show you. He led me through the villa to a level I hadn't explored yet, down a spiral staircase that opened onto a terrace I hadn't known existed. The infinity pool stretched before us, dark water reflecting stars, the edge seeming to drop directly into the ocean far below. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The water is heated, Ramiro said, already pulling off his shirt despite Teresa's warnings. And I've been thinking about this since the moment we got back. You just got stitched up. Again, swimming is a terrible idea. Then don't let me drown. He kicked off his shoes, stripped down to his boxer briefs, and dove cleanly into the water. I stood at the edge, watching him surface, water streaming down his face, moonlight catching the edges of his scars. He looked wild and alive and completely unconcerned with danger. Are you coming? He called. I should have said no. Should have been sensible, careful, professional. Instead, I stripped down to my underwear and tank top and slipped into the heated water. It was perfect, warm as bathwater, but with the infinity edge creating the illusion we were swimming in the open ocean itself. Ramiro swam to me, moving easily despite his injuries. Better. Much. We floated there in the dark, the villa glowing behind us, the stars overhead infinite and cold. This close, I could see the stitches Teresa had just placed, the older scars that mapped a violent history. He should have looked dangerous. Instead, he just looked human. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For agreeing to stay. For not taking the easy way out. His hand found mine underwater, fingers lacing together. I've been alone in this for a very long time. It is good to have someone who understands. I don't understand any of this. You understand enough. He pulled me closer, and suddenly there was no space between us, just water and moonlight and the warmth of his skin against mine. Rosanna. Yes. I'm going to kiss you now. Tell me if that is not what you want. I should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries, kept this professional. Instead, I closed the distance myself. The kiss tasted like salt and gunpowder and whiskey. His hand cupped the back of my head, gentle despite the calluses, and I felt the tension of the past weeks dissolve into something else entirely. Want, need, connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This complicates things, I whispered. Everything is already complicated. Another kiss, deeper this time. This just makes it worth the complications. We stayed in the pool until the water started to cool, until the sky began to pale in the east, until reality reasserted itself, and we had to remember we were more than just two people floating in the dark. I fell asleep in my room as dawn broke, exhausted and confused and more alive than I'd felt in years. When I woke, the sun was high and the villa was quiet. I showered, changed into clean clothes, and was about to go downstairs when I noticed something on my balcony. A single black SUV sat in the driveway below. The driver stood beside it, holding a manila envelope. My stomach dropped. I went downstairs, unlocked the balcony door, and approached the driver. He handed me the envelope without speaking, his face professionally blank. Inside were 3 items. 2 first-class plane tickets to Miami with today's date, a cashier's check for $2 million, and a handwritten note in Ramiro's precise script. Asterisk, you said you wanted this, but I need you to be certain. These tickets are good for 30 days. The money is yours regardless of what you choose. If you stay because you want to, not because you have no other option. Take the day. Think. Decide. Asterisk. Whatever you choose, you will always have my gratitude and my protection. I stood on the balcony, holding $2 million in one hand and a one-way ticket to freedom in the other. And for the first time in weeks, I had to admit I didn't know what I wanted. Behind me, the villa hummed with life. Ramiro's life. The life I just agreed to join. In front of me, an SUV waited to take me to the airport. To safety. To normalcy. The choice was mine, and I had no idea how to make it. In front of me, an SUV waited to take me to the airport. To safety. To normalcy. The choice was mine, and I had no idea how to make it. I stood there for 10 minutes, maybe longer, the envelope growing damp from my sweating palms. The driver remained motionless, patient, waiting for an answer I couldn't give. Finally, I turned and walked back into the villa, the ticket still clutched in my hand. I found Ramiro in the war room, as I knew I would. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian, but his eyes tracked me the moment I entered. He ended the call abruptly. "You are still here," he said, and I couldn't tell if that pleased or concerned him. "I'm still deciding." I held up the envelope. This was a test, wasn't it? No, it was a choice. There is a difference. He gestured to the screens behind him, which displayed what looked like intercepted text messages. "But I'm glad you have not left yet. We have a situation." "Of course we do. The Corsini family has requested a sit-down. Neutral ground. They want to negotiate an end to hostilities." I moved closer to read the messages. "You think it's a trap? I think it is an opportunity. They have lost men, lost face, lost their foothold on Terminal 7. They are weakened. This is when they are most dangerous, but also most willing to compromise." He looked at me. "The meeting is set for dawn tomorrow. Abandoned lighthouse on Point Reyes. Historically neutral territory, visible from all approaches. Both sides bring no more than 3 men. Are you going?" "I have to. Refusing would show weakness." His jaw tightened. "But I do not like it. Too many variables. Too many ways it could go wrong." "Then don't go alone." The words came out before I'd fully thought them through. "Take me with you." His expression hardened. "Absolutely not. Listen to me." I pulled out my phone, the new encrypted one Ramiro had given me to replace my compromised device, and opened a file Teresa had sent me 2 days ago. We have Matteo's confession. Everything he admitted about the Corsinis taking his sister, about them forcing him to betray you. Teresa recorded the whole interrogation. Ramiro's eyes narrowed. I did not authorize that recording. Teresa did it anyway. She said someday you might need proof of who started this war. I played a few seconds. Matteo's voice, broken but clear, admitting the Corsinis had kidnapped Lucia, that they threatened to kill her unless he provided intelligence on Ramiro's operations. This implicates them directly. Kidnapping, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder. If their own men hear this, it could fracture their organization from within. He took the phone, listened to more of the recording, then looked at me with something like admiration. You think we use this as leverage? I think we use it as insurance. If the sit-down goes bad, we have proof of their crimes. Proof that might make their own soldiers question their leadership. And you want to be there to play it? I want to be there because I'm not just your doctor anymore. I'm your partner. Or I could be, if you let me. The word hung between us. Partner. It meant something different than what we'd been, something more than employee or protected asset. It meant equal stake, equal risk. Ramiro was quiet for a long moment. Then, if you come, you follow my orders exactly. No improvisation. No heroics. You do what I say when I say it. Agree, agreed. Then we leave at 4 a.m., wear dark clothes, comfortable shoes, and bring the recording. He handed back my phone. This might save us all. Dawn came cold and gray, fog rolling in from the ocean in thick banks that swallowed everything beyond 50 feet. The lighthouse materialized from the mist like something from a ghost story, a white tower rising from black rocks, its paint peeling, windows long since shattered. The light itself had been dark for decades, but the spiral staircase inside was still intact, winding up 3 stories to the lantern room at the top. We arrived 15 minutes early. Ramiro, myself, and 2 of his most trusted guards, both of whom looked deeply unhappy about my presence. We climbed the exterior stairs to the entrance, our footsteps echoing off stone. Inside, the lighthouse was hollow and haunted, wind howling through broken windows at every level. They will come from the south, Ramiro said, positioning his men at strategic points. We hold a high ground. If shooting starts, you run down, not up. Understand. I nodded, checking the pocket of my jacket where the phone with Matteo's recording waited. At exactly 6 a.m., I heard engines. 3 black SUVs, just as agreed, pulling up on the access road. Car doors opened and closed. Voices carried on the wind. Then footsteps on the exterior stairs. 4 men entered. 3 were clearly muscle, thick-shouldered and watchful. The 4th was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and a face like weathered stone. He wore an expensive coat and moved with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted his own authority. Picho, he said, his English carrying a heavy Italian accent. You are prompt. Corsini. Ramiro's tone was carefully neutral. You asked for this meeting. I am here. Talk. Salvatore Corsini smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Always so direct. No pleasantries, no respect for tradition. This is what happens when the young inherit empires they did not build. I built mine. You are trying to steal it. I'm trying to restore balance. You have too much control, Picho. One man should not own the entire coast. It makes others nervous. Then they should have built their own empires instead of coveting mine. The smile vanished. I'm here to offer you a simple choice. Divide your territory. Give me the southern ports from San Diego to Santa Barbara. You keep everything north of that. We both prosper. The war ends. And if I refuse, then the war continues until one of us is dead. Corsini's eyes flicked to me for the first time, lingering. Who is this? I was told 3 men only. This is my doctor. She is here to treat injuries if your temper gets the better of you. A woman. Corsini studied me with open contempt. You bring a woman to a negotiation. Have you grown so soft? I felt Ramiro tense beside me, but I spoke before he could. I'm also a witness. In case you decide to pretend this meeting never happened. Brave words from someone so fragile. Corsini took a step closer, and both of Ramiro's guards shifted. He noticed and raised a placating hand. I'm not threatening, merely observing. She is pretty, Picho. I understand the appeal, but she makes you weak. She makes me stronger. Then let me test that strength. Corsini's voice hardened. New offer. Give me the woman. She testifies that you forced her to help you, that you held her against her will, that everything the authorities suspect about your operations is true. In exchange, I give you peace. No more attacks. No more dead soldiers. You keep your territory, and I take mine through legitimate channels with her testimony smoothing the way. The lighthouse went silent except for the wind screaming through broken windows. You want me to trade her life for peace, Ramiro said flatly. I want you to trade one woman for the lives of dozens of men who will die if this war continues. It is simple mathematics, Picho. One life or many lives. Choose. Ramiro's hand moved to his weapon. Both of Corsini's guards did the same. We were 3 seconds from bloodshed. No, Ramiro said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. She is not for trade. Not for peace. Not for all the ports on the Pacific. You want her, you go through me. How touching. Corsini's sneer was ugly. The great Ramiro Picho, brought low by a nurse who pulled him from the water. Your father would be ashamed. My father taught me that some things are worth more than territory. Ramiro moved slightly, positioning himself between me and Corsini. She is one of those things. I pulled out my phone, hand surprisingly steady, and pressed play. Mateo's voice filled the lighthouse, echoing off stone walls. They have my sister, the Corsinis. They took Lucia 4 days ago. They sent me a video of her tied to a chair, crying. They said I had 24 hours to give them Picho's location or they would kill her. Corsini's face went white. Turn that off. I turned up the volume. I had no choice. What would you have done? They threatened to send her back to me piece by piece. I said turn it off. Corsini lunged for me, but Ramiro moved faster, his weapon clearing leather and pressing against Corsini's forehead before the older man had taken 2 steps. Touch her, and you die here, Ramiro said quietly. The recording continued. Salvatore Corsini himself gave the order. I heard him on the phone. He said, use the sister. Make him choose between blood and loyalty. Those were his exact words. One of Corsini's guards shifted uncomfortably. The other exchanged a glance with his partner. Both looked at their boss with something new in their eyes. Doubt. This is fabricated, Corsini snarled. Lies told by a traitor to save his own skin. This is testimony from a dying man who had no reason to lie, I said, my voice carrying. And we have copies. Lots of copies. If anything happens to us, they go to every major family from here to New York. They'll all know you started this war by kidnapping an innocent civilian, that you broke the oldest rules we have. The guards were backing away now, hands raised, clearly wanting no part of what was coming. One of them spoke in rapid Italian to Corsini, his tone accusing. Corsini responded with venom, but the damage was done. His own men no longer trusted him. You have lost, Ramiro said, his gun still pressed to Corsini's head. Your soldiers are abandoning you. Your leadership is compromised. Walk away now, retire with some dignity, and I let you live. Refuse, and I end this permanently. You would not dare. Not with witnesses. They're your witnesses. Ask them if they plan to avenge you. Silence. The guard were already retreating toward the stairs, wanting distance from their boss's catastrophic failure of judgment. Corsini's face twisted with rage and desperation. If I fall, you fall with me. He moved, faster than a man his age should have been able to, reaching for a weapon hidden in his coat. Ramiro fired once, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. Corsini stumbled backward, hit the rusted railing of the spiral staircase, and the ancient metal gave way with a scream of tortured steel. He fell 3 stories, his scream cutting off abruptly when he hit the rocks at the base of the lighthouse. Through the gaps in the floor, I could see his body sprawled at an impossible angle, not moving. The remaining guards fled, their footsteps thundering down the exterior stairs. Engine started. Tires squealed on gravel. Then silence. Ramiro lowered his weapon, checked the chamber, holstered it with practiced efficiency. We need to leave. Now. But I was already moving past him, climbing the spiral staircase toward the lantern room at the top. I needed air, needed to see the sky, needed to remember there was a world beyond violence and death. Ramiro followed me up, and we emerged into the lantern room where the great lamp had once warned ships away from the rocks. Now, it was just an empty platform ringed with broken glass, open to the elements. The sun was rising over the ocean, painting the fog in shades of amber and rose. Beautiful and indifferent to everything we'd just done. "You killed him," I said. "I defended us." He was reaching for a weapon. "I know. I'm not accusing you. I'm just processing. Process faster. We have maybe 10 minutes before someone calls the police." "Wait." I pulled the tickets from my pocket, the ones he'd given me yesterday. The offer of escape. The $2 million and a plane to anywhere. I held them up so he could see them, then tore them slowly in half. The pieces fluttered away on the wind, disappearing into the fog. "I don't want out," I said. "I want this. I want you. I want this insane, dangerous, impossible life. I'm done running from it." He stared at me, and something in his expression cracked open. Not just relief or gratitude. Something deeper. "You are certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything." He crossed the space between us in 2 strides and kissed me hard, his hands framing my face, tasting like salt air and desperation and relief. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "Do you still want the tickets?" he asked, echoing my own word from days ago. "I want you," I said simply. "Everything else is just details." "Then let us go home." We descended the lighthouse together, stepping carefully over the spot where the railing had given way, not looking at the body on the rocks below. Ramiro's men were already waiting at the SUVs, engines running. As we drove away, I looked back once at the lighthouse, standing sentinel over the cliffs, a monument to everything that had just changed. The Corsini War was over. My old life was over. And whatever came next, I was choosing it with my eyes wide open. My old life was over. And whatever came next, I was choosing it with my eyes wide open. The patient's blood pressure was dropping. I could see it on the monitors, the numbers ticking down with mechanical precision while the trauma surgeon's hands moved inside the open chest cavity, searching for the bleeder that was stealing this man's life one heartbeat at a time. "Suction," Dr. Kwan said, her voice calm despite the crisis. "More light here. I need to see what I'm working with." I adjusted the surgical lamp, the beam catching the gleam of instruments, the dark red of exposed tissue. The operating theater smelled like antiseptic and blood and the particular electricity of a life hanging in balance. Around me, my team moved with choreographed efficiency. 2 surgical nurses, an anesthesiologist, a physician's assistant I'd hired from Johns Hopkins who'd asked no questions about why a private clinic needed someone with combat trauma experience. "There," Dr. Kwan said. "Intercostal artery. Clamp." I handed her the instrument before she finished asking. 6 months of working together had taught me to anticipate her needs, to read the subtle shifts in her posture that telegraphed what came next. She clamped the vessel, tied it off, checked her work with the methodical precision that had made me hire her in the first place. "Pressure's stabilizing," the anesthesiologist reported. "Good. Let's close him up." Dr. Kwan stepped back from the table, peeling off bloody gloves. "Nice work, everyone. He'll make it." Through the observation window, I could see Ramiro standing in the hallway, hands in his pockets, tie loosened, watching. He'd been there for the past 3 hours, waiting with the patience of someone who'd learned that some things couldn't be rushed. When our eyes met through the glass, he raised one hand in a small salute. I smiled despite my exhaustion and turned back to supervise the closing. The clinic had been operational for 8 months now. State-of-the-art surgical suites carved into the cliff below the villa, accessed by the same funicular that had brought me here a lifetime ago. On paper, we treated executives and athletes, people who valued privacy and could afford concierge medical care. In reality, we treated the men and women of Ramiro's organization, the ones who couldn't walk into an emergency room without triggering police reports and uncomfortable questions. It was illegal, morally compromised, exactly the kind of medicine I'd sworn never to practice. It was also the most important work I'd ever done. Dr. Davide, one of the nurses approached, holding a tablet. The morning's discharge paperwork needs your signature, and you have a visitor scheduled for 10 a.m. Who? Lucia Ferrante. Says she's expected. My chest tightened with something warm. She is. Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. You're holding it wrong, Ramiro said, adjusting my grip on the Glock. Thumbs forward, both hands high on the grip. You want to control the recoil, not fight it. We stood in the villa's basement range, a soundproofed room that smelled like gunpowder and oil. I've been practicing for 2 weeks, and my hand still shook every time I picked up the weapon. I'm a doctor, I said for the 100th time. I shouldn't be learning to kill people. You are my partner. That means you need to be able to protect yourself when I cannot. He guided my arms into position, his body warm against my back. Now, breathe out. Squeeze. I fired. The target 20 feet away acquired a new hole, 3 inches left of center mass. Better, he said. Again. By the end of the session, my grouping had tightened. Not perfect, but survivable. Ramiro nodded his approval. You will never be a soldier, he said as we climbed the stairs back to the main level. But you will not be helpless. That is enough. That night, I woke to find him standing at the bedroom window, staring out at the dark ocean. I knew that posture, the weight it carried. Bad dream. I asked. Memory. He didn't turn. My father used to say that every man in this life makes a choice, to be the wolf or the sheep. But he was wrong. The real choice is between being the wolf or being the shepherd. The wolf kills to feed itself. The shepherd kills to protect the flock. Which are you? I'm trying to be the shepherd. He finally looked at me. But sometimes I worry I'm just a wolf with a conscience. I got out of bed and joined him at the window. Then I'll be your conscience. When you start to forget the difference. His arm came around my shoulders, pulling me close. You are much more than that. I found Lucia in the clinic's reception area, studying an anatomy poster with the intense focus I'd come to recognize in pre-med students. She'd grown in the past year. Not physically. She was still small and delicate, with her brother's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones, but in presence. She no longer carried herself like someone waiting for the world to hurt her. Rosanna. She turned, and her smile was genuine. I hope I'm not interrupting. Never. I gestured toward my private office. Come. Tell me about school. We settled into the chairs by the window, and she pulled out her tablet to show me her grades. Straight A's. Dean's List. Early acceptance into UCSF's medical school program for the following year. This is incredible, Lucia. It is because of you and Senior Picho. You gave me this chance. Her eyes were bright. Mateo would be proud, I think. He would be. I signed her tuition payment authorization for the next semester, adding a stipend for living expenses. He died trying to give you this life. The least we can do is make sure you succeed in it. Sometimes I feel guilty, she admitted quietly, that I get to have this future because he made terrible choices. He made the only choice he could see at the time. Love makes us do desperate things. I thought about my own desperate choices the night I dove into black water to save a stranger. Your job is to honor his sacrifice by living fully, by becoming the doctor he never got to see you become. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. Will you be at graduation? Next spring. I wouldn't miss it. After she left, I stood at the window overlooking the surgical suites below, watching my team prepare for the next case. Dr. Kwan was reviewing scans. The nurses were setting up instruments. The machinery of saving lives turning with practiced precision. You look thoughtful, Ramiro said from the doorway. I turned to find him leaning against the frame, jacket slung over one shoulder, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in weeks. Just thinking about how far we've come. He moved into the office, closing the door behind him. Were you? Both. I gestured at the clinic beyond the window. A year ago, I was patching wounds on your couch. Now I'm running a surgical center that rivals anything in San Francisco. A year ago, you were terrified and alone. Now you're neither. He pulled me close, and I went easily, fitting against him the way I'd learned to do. The clinic is a success. Lucia is thriving. The Corsini territories have been absorbed without further violence. We have built something good from all that blood and chaos. Good is a relative term. Perhaps. But it is ours. He tilted my chin up, his gray eyes serious. Are you happy, Rosanna? Truly. I thought about the question, about the long hours and the constant danger and the moral compromises I made every day, about the fact that I could never go back to conventional medicine, could never explain the gap in my resume or the skills I'd acquired, about how my parents thought I was working for a private medical company overseas and had no idea their daughter was the chief medical officer of a criminal empire. Yes, I said and meant it. I'm happy. Then I have something to show you. He led me outside, where 5 black SUVs sat in the driveway, gleaming in the late morning sun. Not Ramiro's usual vehicles. These were different, newer. The lead SUV's door bore a small emblem I'd never seen before, a medical caduceus intertwined with an anchor. What is this? Your security detail. He opened the passenger door of the lead vehicle to reveal a custom interior, medical supplies, communication equipment, everything I might need for emergency response. You have been using my men for transport and protection, but you have your own operation now. You need your own people. I stared at the vehicles, at the drivers standing at attention, at the subtle modifications that turned luxury SUVs into mobile medical units. Ramiro, this is too much. This is appropriate. You're not just my doctor or my partner. You are the head of a critical division of this organization. You need resources that reflect that. He handed me a key fob. They are yours. Use them as you see fit. I looked at the 5 SUVs and remembered another morning, another arrival. 5 black vehicles filled with armed men, coming to finish what a plane crash had started. I'd been terrified then, convinced my life was ending. In a way it had, but something better had begun. Ready to go home? Ramiro asked, offering his arm. I took it, feeling the solid strength of him beside me. Always. We walked toward the SUVs together, and I caught sight of my reflection in the tinted windows. Tailored white coat, hair pulled back professionally, the bearing of someone who'd earned her authority through blood and skill. I looked like a stranger. I looked like someone who belonged here. The engines idled smoothly, patient beasts waiting for direction. My team inside the clinic waved through the windows as we passed. Dr. Kwan gave me a thumbs up. The nurses were already prepping for the afternoon surgeries. Life continuing in all its complex, compromised glory. What are you thinking? Ramiro asked as we settled into the back seat of the lead SUV. That I pulled a Mafia boss from a sinking jet. I smiled at the memory, at how impossibly naive I'd been. And the next morning, 5 SUVs arrived at my house. Terrified you, as I recall. Completely. I laced my fingers through his. Now 5 SUVs arrive, and they're mine. Funny how things change. You changed them. You changed everything. He lifted my hand to his lips, the gesture tender despite the calluses and scars. A year ago, I was drowning. You saved me. And then you stayed, even when staying was the hardest choice you could make. You saved me too, I said quietly, from a life that was safe and small and slowly killing me. I just didn't know it until you showed me there was another way. The SUV pulled away from the clinic, heading up the winding road toward the villa proper. Behind us, the other 4 vehicles fell into formation, a motorcade of protection and power. Through the window, I could see the ocean stretching endless and blue, the same water I'd plunged into a year ago. Some people would say I'd lost myself in that ocean, that I'd drowned alongside Ramiro, and someone else had emerged. Maybe they were right. The Rosanna Davide, who'd been driving home from a nursing shift at Mercy Point, didn't exist anymore. She died in the cold water, sacrificed to save a stranger who became something far more important. But I didn't mourn her. She'd been sleepwalking through life, going through motions, surviving, but not living. This version of me, morally compromised, legally culpable, dangerously in love, was more alive than that woman had ever been. What's on the schedule this afternoon? I asked. Conference call with the port directors. Then dinner with the Antonelli family to discuss their distribution concerns. He pulled out his phone, scanning messages. And Teresa wants to discuss expanding the clinic's surgical capacity. Apparently, we're getting referrals from other families now. Your reputation is spreading. Good. We can handle the volume. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. We built something good here, Ramiro. Despite everything. Against all odds. We built something real, he corrected. Good and bad. Light and dark, all mixed together. That is more honest than pretending we exist in only one world or the other. The SUVs climbed higher, the villa coming into view. Home. Not the cottage I'd lost, not the life I'd left behind, but home nonetheless. Built on the edge of a cliff, suspended between sea and sky, as impossible and beautiful as everything we'd created together. Do you ever regret it? I asked, giving me the choice to leave. Every day, he admitted, and I am grateful every day that you chose to stay, even knowing what it costs, especially knowing what it costs. He turned to face me fully. Love in this life is not easy or safe, but it is ours, and that makes it worth everything. Love. He'd said it so casually, as if it were a fact rather than a confession. Maybe it was. Maybe we'd moved past the point where such things needed formal declarations. I love you too, I said, wanting him to hear it clearly, in case that wasn't obvious. His smile was slow and genuine, transforming his face into something younger and less guarded. It was obvious, but it is good to hear anyway. The SUVs pulled into the villa's driveway, coming to a synchronized stop. The drivers remained in position, waiting for orders. My security detail, my team, my empire within an empire. Ramiro and I sat in the back seat for a moment longer, neither of us rushing to break the spell. Through the window, I could see Bianca on the terrace, setting up for lunch. Teresa was probably already in the medical wing, cataloging supplies. The guards would be at their posts, watching the approaches, ensuring our safety. This life was dangerous. It would always be dangerous. People would always want what Ramiro had, would always see me as a weakness to exploit. But we'd survive the worst they could throw at us. We'd turned a plane crash into an empire, a rescue into a partnership, desperation into something that looked remarkably like hope. Ready? Ramiro asked, opening his door. I looked at the villa, at the life we'd built together, at the impossible future stretching ahead. Dangerous and precious and ours. Ready, I said. We stepped out together into the morning light, and the 5 SUVs gleamed like promises behind us. Promises of protection, of power, of a world we'd claimed and defended and made our own. I had pulled a Mafia boss from a sinking jet, and in return, he'd pulled me from a life I'd been drowning in without knowing it. We'd saved each other, and somehow, impossibly, that was enough.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.